Welcome back to Technology Behind Business. Now, with the carbon tax announced, many organisations are now starting to ask themselves how they can implement sustainability programs and reduce their carbon footprint. But what about IT? How much does your technology contribute to your emissions, and how can you manage it? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Alison Rowe, Global Head of Sustainability for Fujitsu, Andrew Thomas from Duryea, and Deb Noller, CEO of Switch Automation. Everybody, thanks very much for your time today. Alison, I might start with you. Look, the carbon tax, not surprisingly, it's a rather polarising issue out there, I suppose, at the moment. If it does come into effect, as is most likely, how big an impact would you expect it to have on the community, on the business community?
I think it's going to be positive, because I think it'll put a price on carbon, and that makes it something that we can actually use in a business case to strengthen the case for sustainability. Sustainability has often been seen as something that's more of a marketing-led strategy rather than really making business sense. So I think from a business point of view, this is good. Also, the policy has a range of other mechanisms to it, such as investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And when it comes to IT has a fantastic role to play in energy efficiency within the business community.
And do you think, this isn't something catching businesses' IT departments by surprise, something that, they've been working towards and, largely across?
I think IT, as a concept of GreenIT, has probably ebbed and flowed over the last few years. Certainly we have seen a number of quick wins being implemented, but really the exciting part is thinking about what is the role of IT in replacing business processes or enabling big change outside of the IT industry.
We might get to that in a minute, but Andrew, what are your thoughts? I mean, is this something you expect, like a tsunami, a tidal wave to come in and shake up business, or is it something that, is expected and can potentially have positive impacts?
Well, I think from an environment perspective, it's definitely going to have the positive impact. And I think you mentioned just a second ago that, there's a marketing edge to it, but this gives it something more. This definitely gives, organisations something to think about that really will impact the bottom line one way or the other. So we get a more rigid conversation around, which way that's going to go. Yeah.
Deb, it's interesting to see the fact that obviously there are criticisms that Australia is sort of out of front, leading the pack. But do you need to take into account that many economies, many nations, and so forth are looking to implement strategies to reduce carbon, and this maybe helps put Australia in a forward position with that?
I definitely think Australia's out there in the lead, one of the leaders in this area. I mean, the UK obviously is leading the way also, but if you look at carbon tax, it's just one of the many strategies that governments around the world are implementing to make us all become more aware and more efficient with not just our businesses but also our homes. We've got rising energy costs. That's in many ways that's government driven because of the lack of spending into the infrastructure, so that will drive up the prices. We've got Neighbours, which is a compulsory reporting program that's now into commercial buildings in the CBD, and carbon tax is just another one of those. So whether whether you look at the carbon tax in isolation or not, there's just a whole range of measures that are coming in, and most of the companies that we're dealing with are not yet being forced to deal with energy efficiency, but they're doing it anyway. They're out there on the front foot doing it anyway. And
is it a positive though, the fact that they will be acclimatising, excuse the pun, but in terms of when a greater percentage of the world looks at bringing in more rigid sustainability programs, that Australian business will have already gone through that initial phase?
Correct, but also Australian businesses such as ours to get a chance to be on the very leading edge of developing technology to become more energy efficient. So I see that. I mean, we're working with some absolutely stunning companies that are doing brilliant stuff in the technology sector to make companies more efficient, or to help companies become more efficient. So.
What are some of the ways, Alison, what are some of the big emitters, if you like, within that sort of IT space that companies can look to sort of, reduce?
So I certainly think each industry is different when it comes to IT and how much it is part of the energy bill. I think that's something that's not understood very, very often. Our latest research, I think, has that only 14.2% of the IT departments are budgeted for energy. So that's sort of, I guess, what I would say is something that's hidden, and therefore you don't get as much opportunity known if you don't know the price. But certainly IT is quite significant across a range of industries. If we look at government as an industry, it's typically about 60% of their energy bill comes from IT. much higher if you look at financial institutions and banking, where there's a large reliance on technology. So it really does have a role to play. And it's about understanding that energy bill and then being really able to drive significant changes through the business.
Andrew, what about data centres? They, from what I understand, are a rather large emitter in terms of that, you know, that sort of IT space.
They are, and I guess from our perspective, we see it every day. We are, you know, working in and around those data centres, and we've been instrumental, I guess, in bringing virtualisation to the Australian shores. And so over the years, it's been, you know, probably the last 4 years, it's been nothing for us to come across an organisation using, say, you know, 100 physical servers that we couldn't take and then replace with 10 or 5 servers in replacement of that. And when you think about just the cost reductions and then the flow on in energy reductions around that, and of course the next step to that is obviously there's a carbon, you know, footprint reduction. So we see it every day in what we do. So
cloud, do you think, is, you know, the idea of cloud, one of those another major benefit for companies, business to look at is the fact that it does reduce that carbon footprint?
Yeah, enormous. You know, if the first step is virtualising an on-premise set of servers, then taking the next step out to the cloud, you know, the efficiencies you get, you know, the scale that you get across that, you continue to save.
I agree with that. I mean, if you look at all those small businesses out there, and I mean, our business ourselves, we've got a cloud-based platform, but we also moved a lot of our services to the cloud. So what that did was it take all that excess capacity on our server, just in case we need it, and moved it to the cloud, where they've got a much better way of managing that. And then everybody in our office now has a very thin, lightweight, low-powered PC. We used to change PCs every 18 months, so we've got a lot less e-waste. We're a lot more efficient because our files are always available to us, whether you're at home or in the office. So, I mean, I think there's huge benefits in the whole cloud computing.
There's a growing, I suppose, market, if you like, in terms of products for greater efficient sort of products. I mean, how effective are they, or is it like most things? There's a large divergence between different products.
Are you talking about devices within in the home?
Yeah, I mean, you were mentioning, I suppose, in terms of the computers and things like that and so forth.
Yeah, well, to me, if you're old enough, it's all gone around and come around. We used to have centralised computing and WISE terminals, and now we've gone back to centralised computing, but of course it's much more sophisticated, and we've got much more clever devices. So
from our perspective, certainly, you know, the devices are now built to be energy efficient, and you can manage that better. So when you're understanding the load, and when your device is capable of shutting down or using low power when it's not in use, you know, the savings, your flow-on effects you get from that can be quite significant.
And I think it's a combination of all those three things. So it is about having a sustainable data centre, which is inherently efficient itself, and then putting cloud computing in there and making sure that the IT assets you use within the data centre and at the end user is all part of that equation.
Alison, from a large corporation perspective, I mean, I suppose a lot of sustainability targets and so forth. I mean, how effective are they, and I mean, how successful are they in achieving, from your experience?
Well, I mean, I think that they are very successful, and I think they start to put a baseline and, I guess, a dedicated commitment towards achieving those. I think a lot of companies have done exceptionally well. I think it's also about balancing out some short-term targets with some longer-term targets. So our business has targets and policy out to 2100. With some immediate short-term targets.
2100.
Which I guess is quite amazing.
Sustainability manager then?
I probably won't be around then, but that's, I guess, this long-term thinking, and that's very much part of the Japanese culture, is a focus on long-term. But there's also needs to be short and medium-term. So we have targets out to 2012 and then out to 2020. And one thing we've done is go that next step further and make customer targets, so that we've said we'll reduce our customers' emissions, not just our own. So I think it's really important to balance that out, not just about your own company, but the contribution you make to society.
The other side of the ledger, the cost side. I mean, is it a costly process becoming more green, reducing the footprint, or is it something that should be seen as a short-term cost, or does it not make much difference? It might start with you, Andy.
Yeah, good. We every time we go in to do a project with our customers, there's an element that we discuss around green and the effects that we can have on that. It's never the deciding factor. So you know, it's not without being able to save costs that we get a project over the line. So you know, take for example virtualising 100 servers down to 10. It wouldn't be just that we reduce the carbon footprint, but the reduction in servers that they're buying, and the cost associated with that, the cost associated with power when you're running those, reduced server counts, that's what probably gets it over the line. I guess now as we introduce a carbon tax, we see an additional cost that actually is associated very closely with that footprint, that green conversation.
Deb, would you agree? I mean, cost one of the key issues?
No, well, we're on the other side of the equation to Andrew, because everybody that's making a decision to use our technology wants to be greener. So they're actually making a decision to spend money because they're putting in infrastructure that allows them.
Is that because longer term they'll think it will be cost effective?
Yeah, and I think that it's a better solution. If you take typical building systems, they do a fantastic job of providing information directly to the people that are managing the building, but our solution covers every stakeholder of a building, right through from the visitor and the shareholder to the people that live and work in the building, to the people that manage the entire asset. And so what we're trying to do is just deliver all of the information that people that need to make smart decisions about how they're going to reduce their energy.
All right, look, we do have to leave it there. Thank you all for coming in. A pleasure.